Hello, welcome to Paleo Greenbird. I'm Greenbird, and in today's video we're going to be flint knapping a rainbow obsidian triangle. So you can see we have a beautiful piece of rainbow obsidian. Not exactly sure where this was harvested, but I did get this material from Will Self. So if you're interested in that same material, go ahead and try and find him. He's on Facebook. He's probably on some other media platforms as well. And we're going to turn this into a point. So slab knapping is a little bit like politics. If you bring the conversation up in any flint knapping forum, you will find people who have very strong feelings one way or the other. Some people think that slab knapping is not real knapping and it's cheating and whatnot. You'll have others that that's the only knapping that they do. And my personal thoughts on it are, as long as you're knapping, who cares what you're doing? I personally don't have a preference towards knapping slabs. It has nothing to do with the fact that I feel like it's cheating or not real flint knapping or anything like that. It's just, it's not my preference. I love percussion. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I love percussion. I would make bi-faces all day long if I could. And on a second note, these preforms are a really good way to introduce yourself into flint knapping. It's because it's not difficult. It still allows you to learn the fundamental skills needed to successfully flint knap, even percussion, because remember, pressure is the same physics as percussion is. It's just you're using a tool and forcing the flake off instead of smacking it. It's just because it's smaller. So if you ever decide to do percussion, if you ever decide to do slab knapping, don't let the haters get to you. So without further ado, we are going to grind this, which is probably what I should have been doing while I was doing all that senseless talking. So if you ever want to sit back and watch the fireworks, go into a Facebook forum and ask what people think about slab knapping. But it's really fun, and it's quick gratification. If nothing else, you'll probably just be happy that this video is not going to be an hour long like most of my videos. I'll use this flaker. I'm going to use my rubber hand pad, and I have a wooden one handy too. So let's just talk about a couple things that you want to be cognizant of. You do want to be careful that you don't snap this in half. And what's going to cause that is usually end shock. So you want to make sure you're supporting the tip as much as you can, especially in the beginning. I find that it works better for me if I start with the tip and work my way to the thick end. But there's no hard and fast rules. So what you're doing is you're pushing in on the stone and plucking away, which is exactly what you're doing when you're doing percussion. When you're doing percussion, you're smacking down and in, right? So because we're not hitting it, we're just using our pushing force because it's such a small piece. That's what we're going to do. So always keep contact with that tip and hope that you don't get obsidian stuck into the tip of your finger. Okay. Got a little flake. That's all we needed. I'm going to try and practice good habits and keep my hand against my leg. So I'm using my body, not necessarily just my wrist. Down in, or down and out rather. So I'm pushing down and I'm plucking out. And you can see I'm starting to get a flake pattern. Now you'll see I get all these, ridges and deltas. That's fine. That's what we're going to use when we take the second pass. The first pass, you're really just what they call skinning it. You're getting rid of the saw mark. This was sawed with a diamond bit or a carbide bit saw. So we're getting rid of all that rough stuff to expose the beautiful material underneath. And what I find is that if you can see these deltas, these ridges right here, I always try and line up. So here you can see the material stops. I always go a little bit further before I take my next flake for a couple reasons. One, remember your flake always feathers out, so you'll get a better pattern. So for example, let's see if I can get this in the camera. Here's where my last flake came. See that concavity right there? So one might think, let's just go ahead and line that right up. But I go a little bit further because, for one, if I don't shoot that flake all the way across, I have an area, I have a ridge, because if I have a ridge here, and I go further and I shoot a flake, that automatically creates a ridge in the middle. I can come clean that up later, and I don't have these islands that form of material that I couldn't flake off of the slab. And I hope that makes sense. So I always say, whenever you line it up just a little bit further than that last flake you took. Now, you don't want to put pressure in the middle. That'll snap your point every time. If you're a guitar player, you want to use like a bar chord type of mentality. I'm sorry I'm always giving people the middle finger in these videos, but that's just the way it is. So no pressure in the middle, you'll snap it, because remember we have that groove right there. Just enough support so that you don't get that shock that vibrates through the whole piece. So I'm going to take that pointy part that formed, and I'm going to put that up to where my groove is and slide it just a little bit past it. Working with Obsidian, which I don't really prefer to work with. Okay, so here's a good example. So you can see right here, I took that ridge a little bit further down. It did not really clean off as much as I wanted it to, but the point I want to make is that right here, where there was some material left, I have a ridge that I can take to bust that off, and it'll probably clean that up too. So I'm going to take that right now, actually. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to take it right now. I'm going to come back to it. So as you get further down the base, you need to dry those flakes further, which means you need a little bit more downward pressure before you pluck it off. All right, not great, but it worked. So I'm going to backtrack to this spot here, and I'm going to clean that up. That's that spot that had that leftover material. I'm not going to press in the middle. I'm just going to lightly put my hand on it, but I'm going to support the tip and the base. And there we go. That's our first pass on that side. Now, I guess you could do whatever you want. You can go to the other side if you want. I prefer to stay on the same face side. Now I'm going to take it from this side, over here, this direction rather, to make those flakes meet. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of pressure, a little bit of contact right here in the tip. I'm going to take small flakes. I don't want to break that tip. Need much at this point. You're not traveling that far. I do my best not to break this tip, but there's no guarantees. I'll post it either way. So I'm just riding that ridge. Every time I take a flake, I'm going to go right to where that high part is left. So you can see I've skinned down there, and as soon as I get to this high part, I'm going to put that pretty much just slightly past the groove in my pad. You'll have to experiment to get the right distance. Try not to put too much pressure here, but supporting it on the tip. Then I'm going to grind a little. You can never over grind, at least in this particular application. Now, when you're looking at the material that's left, you know, think about it from the perspective of, you know, you need to remove all that material. So sometimes you might not want to take a flake that's directly coming across. Sometimes you need to go at an angle. Slight angle. You don't want to go too much. You don't want to affect your flake pattern. But in this case, I think I can get away with just taking a good, solid flake. Down and out. Try to use my leg and not my wrist so that I can do this for many more years to come. Riding those ridges just like I would a platform. You can see it. That's that ridge. I'm putting that ridge right up to the edge of my groove, so I'm kind of actually taking a little bit beyond where that ridge is. Okay, remembering as you get to the base, you need to take longer flakes. It's going to require a little bit more force downward. As you get to the end, obviously your base is going to fall into that groove. Sometimes you have to angle it a little bit. Do whatever you have to do to keep that comfortable for you. I wish I had like magic words of wisdom, but you sort of have to just do this and feel it. Okay. And I'm left with just a little bit of saw marks on the base, which is okay because I haven't addressed the base yet. And because some of my flakes didn't go all the way across on the bottom there, I'm going to just run with some short flakes, not big flakes. Just some thinning and cleaning flakes up the front. And when I get to that part where there's material there, I want to make sure I take off enough to clean off those saw marks. So I might take a little bit longer of a flake. There we go. But just enough. You don't need too much. Keep everything in line. And there we go. We have our first pass. That's what the edges look like. But we've skinned off that first side. And we've got some decent looking flake patterns, which will get better as we go. So now that we've done this side, we're going to grind the edges. Let's take off the other side. See, here's a perfect example of where I left some material where the saw marks were, but because I staggered that, I still have a ridge here. I can try and flake off that spot that I missed. That's what I'm going to do. Give it good support and try and drive a nice long flake. Rid of that booger. Look at that. See? That works. Not the way everybody skins a preform, but a triangle, but works for me. That's one of the great things about being self-taught is that you don't fall into the, you know, assumptions of having to do things a certain way. So down here I still have some material that I wasn't able to take off coming across. I could try and take some of these ridges and get those off, but because I need to thin the base anyway, I'm just going to take some upward flakes. They're not going to be that long. They're not going to really affect my pattern, and I need to thin that base out anyway. Okay, I'm going to grind though. So I'm kind of looking at where the material is that I want to take off, where I need to hit it. I've got some material over here past where there's still a flake pattern, which means I'm going to have to, even though there's a flake pattern there, I still need to hit on that edge to drive that off. It's interesting, but sometimes that happens. So now is where you look at your angles. Got it. Drove off all that crappy stuff. And now I just have a little bit here. I'm thinning the base anyway, so I don't want to go away. Alright, let's check it out. Oh, wait a minute. So I found a spot right here. There's some material that needs to come off. That's okay. I think that's that spot I left. Or I just missed it. So this is what we're left with. We have a decent flake pattern on that side. Decent flake pattern on this side. Still have really thick edges. So what I like to do, and this is not what a lot of people do, it's probably, I don't know, it's a matter of preference, or perhaps my skinning skills are not as good as some others out there. I take my preform, I grind it as good as I can on all the edges, including the base. And I look for thick spots that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring this center line true. So I may need to take a flake here, but maybe I need to skip over here and then jump down to here and take a flake. Skip that, jump down to here and take a flake. Now in a perfect world, you would want everything so symmetrical that, you know, this is a perfect zigzag, but that doesn't always happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pad. I'm just going to choose this side, and I can see, just from putting it on my pad, and I'm sure you can see it too, there's a high spot right here that needs to come off. Maybe one right here on this side. So let's take this real high one here first. Good support on the tip and on the base, very light in the middle. Okay. Not looking for a huge flake, just looking to get that edge, center line to come true. Now I'm going to take that one on the tip that we saw, very, very light. Apparently you need to adjust that just a little bit. Alright, so this side is a lot better. Now let's address this side. You can see, I'll put it back up to my pad, all the high ridges. So let's take those high ridges out. And I'm going to start here towards the tip. Just trying to kind of flatten that out a little. I mean, obviously, every time you take a flake, you're going to leave another ridge. Not always, but most of the time. Depending on how thick the triangle is. But it doesn't matter if you flatten it out. If you flatten it out and you don't leave yourself other ridges to take, that's sort of like just starting over again. In fact, that's kind of what I try and do. Otherwise, you can get real thin spots. Snap it. So. Sometimes you have to flip it over a little bit, do some fine tuning. Just trying to thin it out. Alright, so you can see this side here is significantly more narrow than this side, which means let's start working on this side. Obsidian makes such a mess, but it's what I have on hand right now. I'm glad the base too, because we might work on that a little bit. It's the same thing. I'm gonna find all those high spots. I'm just gonna try and level it out, thin it without creating any really low spots. Down and out, or down in rather, down and plucking away. So I'm going to push the pressure flaker down, and then I'm going to pluck out, taking off little flakes. Not too much pressure supporting the tip, so I don't get shock. Making sure I clear the pad in between flakes. Just riding that continuous platform, that little zigzaggy shape, all the way down. Nice long flake. Move down to the base, further towards the base here. You can see a spot that really needs to be addressed. It's like anything else, keep it thicker in the middle. Alright, so this side's starting to get pretty well thin enough to flip over to the other side. Again, I'm going to address the thick spots first. It didn't feel good. I felt like I almost broke it that time. Okay, so now you can see that edge is thin, and it's actually even a little bit thinner than this one. Try and equalize that. I'm using that word right. And you can keep just pressure flaking each side more and more until you get no edge left on there. That's not what I do. I'll show you what I do. So now I'm just trying to get these edges as thin as I can. And I'm going to work on the base a little bit here, because that's been a little neglected. Just like anything else, hitting those low spots, hitting those what would normally be a platform. Both sides. Find those high spots, get rid of them. Touch-up work. Alright, so that last flake I took, this might be a little thick, but we're going to do it anyway. That last flake I took kind of dove down a little bit, which creates me a little bit of a platform to start a zigzag, which is what I'm going to do, just to get off the rest of that material. Again, we could still take many more passes across this, you know, if that's how you wanted to attack it. I generally don't do that. Okay, so you can see that's where I started. There's my first flake. I'm just going to zigzag this all up and down until I can get to that, to tip. And I'm going to do it on the other side too. Trying just to take that excess material off, that edge, not take any more than I have to. Just to get that edge sharp and not flat. Nope, maybe not. Just got a funky angle. There we go. Just want to take off that edge. If you need to, you can change the angle, because you don't need that whole groove. We're just taking off the edge. As long as the groove is there. Be careful when you get to this tip. This is when you could snap it. Make sure you're supporting that tip. So far, so good. Little flakes when you get to the tip. You don't have to take off a lot. Alright. So you can see we went from this flat edge here to this sharp edge. And it's a zigzaggy pattern, so I mean, it's, you know, we probably don't want to leave it that way, but it's good for now. So now I'm going to go for the base. Zigzag that base because I already have a downward flake that started right here, which is the same one that I started to ride up, actually. Pretty sure. There's another one from that same side. Always have contact with the tip. Can't see it, but I do have contact with the tip right here. Just that little bit of contact, believe it or not, is enough to help keep it from snapping. It's not a guarantee, but it's preferred. I could grind a little bit more right now, but because I'm taking off these flakes in a zigzag pattern, I'm not really going to get too worried about it. As long as my copper can grip it, I don't need to control a nice long flake. I just need it to be able to grab onto that copper. Obsidian is so messy. Alright, so now we've done the same thing to the base. Now we just gotta do that one other side. Not out of the woods yet though, we could still bust it. I'm gonna have my thumb make contact with the tip to absorb any vibration. Again, I'm zigzagging this. It was a little bit wonky, so I had to fix it. Not ideal, but it happens. So now I'm looking at my center line, making sure all these zigzags that I'm producing, I'm giving myself the least of the opportunity to keep everything on center line. So my tip is a little bit pointed in one direction, so I'm going to fix that. You might lose a little off the tip, but who cares? I'd rather lose a little bit of length than have a tip that does not follow the center line. So there we go. So we've cleaned this up. So what we're left with is this nice little guy here, which is ready to be ground. See how thin it is? Just need to grind this. Put some notches in it. If we were going to use this for a hunting point, we'd want to sharpen it. does look like this side here flares out a little bit more. Guess I could do something about that. That's not a hard fix. Just think about what doesn't belong there and how to get rid of it. I find starting at the base helps. Take too much off without looking at it. You can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. When you've gone to this much work, it's really sad when you do something silly that destroys the point. At least makes it not as good as it could be. This is going to be a necklace anyway. Alright, we'll call that good. So there we go, we just made a point out of a slab, or a triangle. Basically just a shaped slab. You can see this still needs a little bit of shaping. It's not perfect, but I can do that on my own time. I don't need to bore you by you watching that. Alright, so I'm looking at this point, and to me, this point wants side notches. So what does that mean? Basically means instead of cutting the notches up from the ears to give it that sort of traditional, I guess what most people think Native American arrowheads look like, we're coming from the side so that when this is slid into a split stick, excuse me, or an arrow shaft or whatever, the hafting will go around and then, you know, crossed over instead of up and over. I think it'll look nice. So I'm just grinding off the edges here. And like I said, there is a little bit of fine-tuned shaping that could be done. Just a tiny little bit. I'm not going to mess with it too much. Now I can sharpen these edges if this was a point I wanted to use for hunting. And they're already pretty sharp. They're still a little zigzaggy, but I'm not too worried about that. Because what'll happen is if I wanted to sharpen this, I would just flake into those lower platforms and that would create like teeth. And I could still do that even after it's notched. But I don't like to sharpen my points until I'm ready to use them because they just clank around with all your other points, and even if they don't clank around, they just naturally dull. So I don't really worry about sharpening my points until I'm ready to use them. So let's start this notching process. So what I want to do is I'm going to take notches straight inward, almost like a Cahokia point, only I'm not going to come up from the bottom. At least I don't plan to. Who knows if I change my mind. I'm still using my larger copper nail. I don't in fact, I don't have my smaller one. It's inside, but so this will have to work. Let's see here like this. Find my spot. Get a nice flake. Keep it going. I'll probably take one more before I switch to the other side. The reason I do that is because I have a decent notch there. Maybe not as deep as I want it, but I want to make sure that the other side goes just as far. I don't want it to stall out and have uneven notches, so I'm not going to go crazy on one side until I get a chance to work on the other. Just pushing flakes off. Okay, so this is when you can really look at it. You can see if the symmetry is there or not. You can see this looks a little bit odd. I need to trim this up. Try and grind those notches a little bit deeper. Try and just clean up the shape a little bit. So both sides look the same. That's what I want it to look like. Just take a little off the bottom so it looks a little bit better. I notched a little bit on the high side. So I'm just taking a little bit off the bottom, that's all. The center of this in a little bit. See how much better that works when you push that against your leg. Certainly wish I could continue to do that. That would be something that I work on. Alright, so we have sort of like a fishtail. I'm going to call this done. So what we have here is kind of like what we would call a fishtail. And we'll slide this down into the shaft. So anyway, here we go. This is our point. Sort of a fishtail. I should probably grind this off. So when I'm hafting it, nothing is going to slice through. And it also helps get rid of all that light stuff and reveal its true shape. Not what it looks like before you grind it, but what it looks like after all the junky stuff that wants to go away goes away. I'm going to try and do more videos where I actually finish the point, including notches. I'm just trying not to make them so long, but let me know what you think. If you'd prefer them to be longer and have the finished notches in them, I'll do that. So I hope you're having an awesome day. Appreciate every one of you for watching. I know I don't have a huge audience, but I have so much fun doing this, so let me know if there's anything you want me to do. So until next time, this is Paleo Greenbird. I am signing out.